are being pursued.
Did Cyberpunk 2077 leave its mark on the last generation as a failure, or did it redeem itself and release a product that was of playable quality? That's what I want to get into in this video. Despite the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 launched as one of gaming's biggest disasters in my lifetime, it's one of my favorite games. The pure escapism of exploring this dystopian open world that's as fresh and exciting as it is familiar, it truly feels like an experience that you can't get from any other piece of media, and it's something that I've put hundreds of hours into across every single platform you could play this on. As everybody knows, this game launched as a complete disaster on the PS4 and Xbox One, but by the time that they got around to patching that game up, I had moved on with the PC, and by the time the next gen update came out, I was on the Xbox Series consoles with that. But what I wanted to know was whether or not the game is actually playable on those older consoles, because they did do quite a bit of updates to it. Version 1.0 of these games on the PS4 and Xbox One with no updates or patches is quite literally an unplayable experience by definition. It's really bad. There's stretches of the game that you can just run through and the AI won't respond at all because it's like what the game is doing and calculating can't keep up with the player's actions.
We had to constantly improve our in-game streaming system for all gen consoles. Streaming is responsible for feeding the engine with what you see on screen, as well as the game mechanics. And since the city is so packed and the disk bandwidth of all gens is what it is, it constantly challenged us.
Not only was it just full of game-breaking bugs and audio issues and visual issues, it was just a very ugly game. It ran at a terrible frame rate and it looked really bad. It looked like Vaseline was smeared all over the screen. But I'm not here to discuss the 1.0 version of the game because that's something that I have experienced multiple times and I've already spent a lot of time in that. What I want to know is whether or not the game was ever brought into a playable state for those older consoles.
Aim for the driver!
So after fully patching the game, that's where I came to the realization that you're only updating the game to a certain point. I believe it's around 1.6. What this means is you're not going to be getting the 2.0 updates that came with the new versions of the game. You're not getting the vehicles with mounted weapons, you're not getting a wanted system, you're not getting the overhauled progression system, and I believe you're not getting as many dialogue options when it comes to doing things like texting characters throughout the story. What you should be getting is the intended experience as it was launched on all platforms like the PC at its launch, where it was pretty playable for the most part. By and large, the PC didn't have the same issues of the consoles. After loading in and making my character, things were immediately a little bit concerning to me when I saw one of the characters I was having dialogue next to holding a gun next to him while he was eating a burger. So surely I thought, well, here we go. We're about to experience a whole mess of bugs and problems, and this is the mark that CDPR left on these old consoles. But as we got further into the game and we got further into the prologue section, things were looking pretty promising.
Woman of the hour. Jeez, it took you long enough.
Another thing I noticed and was reminded of on these older consoles was the loading times. God, they're egregious. Anytime you're moving through different sections of the story that isn't you just moving through the open world freely, you're constantly being bombarded by these loading screens that take forever. This is especially egregious on the Xbox One VCR. Did I mention I was playing this on that console? Yeah, apparently that one had the worst performing hard drive out of all of the older consoles. I figured if any console was gonna struggle with this game, this would be the one to test it on. But as I got through the prologue for the fucking 8th time I've played this game, things were looking fairly promising. But the second I was able to freely explore the environment, I was immediately trying to break the game. I was trying to see what the open world looked and felt like. I was trying to see how many NPCs I could get on the screen, what crazy stuff could I do. And the thing I noticed right off of the bat is, one, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it would. If you played version 1.0 on the PS4 and the Xbox One, it looks awful, like legitimate Vaseline smear on the screen. There's this horrible ghosting effect as well whenever you're driving or moving around, and I mean it looks really, really bad, and I'm sure that this gameplay doesn't really do it justice, but it's quite a bit sharper. The resolution didn't really bother me that much outside of noticing that it looked like it was constantly doing this reconstruction thing, like maybe like a DLSS thing. It's kind of hard to explain, but it looks like the world is constantly in this state of AI generation or something, where it's looking a little mushy and then it sharpens up, and there's some pop-in and some LOD things that you'll notice as you play, but honestly, considering what this is playing on, it's not too terribly bad. The fact that they even have this game running on a console this old that was made with mechanical hard drives in mind is kind of shocking to me. And in some instances, I was like, damn, this game still looks pretty good, even in this state. But as I'm smashing the car up and just kind of having fun messing around, the other thing that I notice about the world itself is that it's feeling a little bland out here. There's not a lot of AI and traffic to be seen. The world's feeling a little bit barren. I noticed that sometimes if you're just circling around and looking back and forth, you can kind of get cars to pop up. So if you're out on an abandoned stretch of highway and you don't see anything, you can just kind of turn in circles a couple times, then maybe some cars will appear out of nowhere. I did at one point get the car stuck in the staircase here, which I thought was pretty funny. I legitimately couldn't get it out. I thought for sure maybe I could shoot the car across the map or something, but that didn't happen. Sometimes it seems like there's a fair amount of NPCs and cars on screen, and then sometimes it seems like they're not there at all. In both instances, the frame rate still gets a little rough. I figured I would try to play through a couple of the story beats and actually get a fair bit into the first chunk of the game to see if it would actually play smoothly. And it kind of seems that whether you're in these story bits or you're in the open world, the frame rate is pretty rough, man. I'm not gonna lie. One thing I did notice about the story segments is the AI was fairly responsive to me no matter how fast I was running through the levels. They seemed to always be able to catch up and start attacking me. So logically, it did seem like the game could keep up with what was going on, albeit at a little bit of a low frame rate. I was playing on normal difficulty, and I felt like in a lot of instances, maybe they've tweaked the difficulty on this game to be a little bit easier to favor that low frame rate. I'm not really sure how true that is, but I remember dying constantly when I was playing this before, but I'm not sure if I would contribute that to a higher difficulty or not. So it seemed like the story segments and the gameplay was holding up relatively well, so I was, again, genuinely trying to break the game whenever I had the opportunity to, like when I went out into the open world. I tried piling a bunch of cars together and blowing them up. I tried shooting through crowds and driving into areas that may have been a little too densely populated for the Xbox One and slammed into stuff and tried to create a lot of physics-based destruction, or at least as much as I could. But overall, I couldn't get the game to crash once. I legitimately tried to break this game and I thought for sure I would get it to crash because it's crashed on every platform I played it on, whether that be PC or next-gen consoles. There's always been a time where the game was just like, all right, I'm out. But ironically, it seems like the most stable version of the game might just be the worst version of the game. So after playing into the missions a little bit and messing around the open world, not being able to get the game to crash, this is where I kind of thought to myself, why am I making this video? In my head, this was an interesting project. I thought to myself, surely if I go back and I play this game that was known to be so broken, I could show how broken it still is and say, oh wow, it's so disgraceful that they left it like this in this broken of a state, but I couldn't break the game, so to speak. I just covered the GTA trilogy that I've also been playing on the Xbox One, and that game is infinitely more broken than anything that Cyberpunk is doing. Crazy to say that. Even just watching some of the gameplay back here, what really surprises me about this game running on the Xbox One, and I guess PS4 as well, is how well it is holding up with all of these physics-based things going on. You don't have the Dogtown expansion, but you still have the open Cyberpunk world to explore, and it's still just as detailed as it is on other consoles and the PC. Albeit maybe a little less populated with objects and stuff, it's still the same city. Core deformation is still as detailed as it is on other platforms, minus things that they added later like windows breaking and tires running out of air. And the city's still littered with physics-based objects to knock around. And you even still have the same original mission structure available to you if you wanted to play through the game.
Fat-ass motherfucker.
It's kind of crazy to look at this game in retrospect and think, yeah, we were complaining about all of the things that this game didn't have compared to, let's say, GTA 5, but in all honesty, this is still a pretty impressive game to be running on a, what is it now, 11-year-old console? I did a Cyber Psycho mission just to see how well a side thing held up, and that seemed to work fine. Fast traveling and changing the time of day didn't really seem to do anything game-breaking to it. Overall, I would say that this seems like a fairly playable version of the game. Disclaimer, I've only put about 10 hours into this version of the game, so I haven't played it all the way through or anything, but it seems to be working. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you go out of your way to play this version of the game outside of morbid curiosity just to see how this thing performs like I did. But say you're a person that only has a $50 Xbox or PS4 and you legitimately have no way to upgrade. It's playable. So what would be my nitpicks as to why maybe you shouldn't play this version of the game? Well, first thing would probably be immersion. Immersion is king in this game to me, period. You want to have the best experience possible, of course. And when it comes to this version of the game, you can't really get the traffic and the pedestrians to do a lot of crazy stuff. A lot of times the streets are a little barren and empty in a lot of cases, and that can definitely lead to it feeling a little dull. Content's another legitimate concern. This game has gotten a lot of free updates and a lot of overhauls over the years. You're not gonna have the wanted system, you're not gonna have police chasing you, you're not gonna have the same amount of vehicles and customization options that you have in the newer versions of the game. You're not gonna have as many dialogue options when you're talking to other characters in the game, and the experience as a whole is just gonna feel a little bit more empty overall. I mean, hell, even if you were just playing this on the Series S, you're still getting the next gen version of the game, and I think those can be had relatively cheaply. And even playing this on a lower end PC isn't necessarily out of the question. I can run this on a ROG Ally, which is pretty wild to think about. So overall, I wouldn't recommend that you go out of your way to play this version of the game, but it's definitely an interesting thing to look at. It's kind of cool to see where this game stopped and where it continued on newer platforms, and it's a real stopgap in between generations and a weird look at gaming as a whole in the past 10 years. Or 5, 6 years. When the hell did this game come out? I don't even remember at this point, dude. Why did I make this video? I don't know. I know a lot of people have their reservations against this game. A lot of people don't love it, but I got a soft spot in my heart for it, man. I've put a lot of hours into this and I love the world. Almost as much as I'd love to know your thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077 in the comments, but not as much as I love the channel members, baby. You see this guy right here? And 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 this guy again? These guys directly put money into my pockets to waste on things like the Xbox VCR to play the original version of Cyberpunk. If you want to have your name permanently immortalized in one of these videos, be sure to become a channel member to get on in the credits and do some cool emotes in the comments. Were those things called emojis? Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. It's been Josh. I'll see you in the next one. Now I know what you're probably wondering, what's been in the toolbox this whole time? Well, it's actually my stash of Pokemon packs, and we're gonna go ahead and open one now that everybody's gone. Got a Surging Sparks here. Hottest set on the scene right now next to 151, and I have not been able to find any of these at my stores recently, but let's see what we get. All right, I'm gonna need you guys to let me know what I get because I don't know. I don't have one of those cameras where you can see the display. I don't even know if this is in focus or in frame right now, but I hope it is. Surfer guy, common. Got another common. We got, oh shit, we got Jasmine's dude. That's a pretty nice trainer card. I like that one, man. That's pretty cool, man. And then we got a little hollow.